The sky was bright when the first alien ship arrived over Earth's eastern hemisphere. No warning, no message. Just a shadow blocking the sun and a hum that made birds crash from the sky. People stared, confused and terrified, until the first blast hit a city without mercy. Jaren, a young man living on the outskirts, watched the fireball bloom in the distance. It looked like a sunrise had exploded on the wrong side of the horizon. His ears rang. His hands shook. His sister screamed and pulled him into their underground shelter, barely avoiding the second wave of tremors. The aliens didn't come to talk. They came to collect. Their message played across Earth's networks in every language. You are now property of the Sarek Dominion. Serve or perish. Their war machines rolled through cities like gods of metal. Their soldiers, tall and horned with glowing eyes, herded people like cattle. Humans didn't understand their language, but the weapons spoke clearly. Jaren tried to fight back. He threw a stone at a patrol unit when they dragged an elder out of his home. The unit responded with a whip that shot electricity into Jaren's chest. He collapsed, stunned and twitching, as a blue-skinned Sarek officer stepped over him and ordered his collar to be locked in place. They took him to a ship. Hundreds of humans were crammed into metal walls, knees to chest. The air smelled like sweat and blood. One by one, the prisoners were marked, scanned, and assigned a number. Jaren's number was burned into a black armband that clamped to his wrist. The Sarek believed humans were weak, slow, easy to train. But they didn't expect resistance. They didn't expect humans to question orders or talk back. When Jaren refused to kneel during his assigned submission drill, the alien instructor hissed in disbelief. She struck him. He stood back. Up Kalan, her name was Kavexa, a war captain in training. Her job was to break new slaves. Her pride was her control. But Jaren annoyed her. He didn't fear her. He didn't obey. When she yelled, he stared at her like she was the one who didn't make sense. She locked him in solitary for 2 days. No food. No water. Still, when the door opened, he walked out with his head high. When she ordered him to kneel again, he spat on the floor. Something strange flickered in her eyes, but she turned and left without a word. The Sarek upper command watched Jaren's behavior on hidden feeds. One of the observers was Princess Ayari, youngest daughter of the Empress. She was a scholar, not a soldier. She studied alien languages and ancient cultures. When she saw the human resist Kavexa again, she leaned forward with curiosity. Why does he not break? She asked her advisors. Why does pain not stop him? No one answered. Jaren became her subject of study. She ordered him brought to her ship. He thought it was for punishment. Instead, she offered him food and water and asked him to speak. At first, he said nothing. He didn't trust her. She was another Sarek, another captor, but she didn't shout. She didn't strike. She listened. When he asked for his name back instead of a number, she gave it to him. When he asked why they invaded Earth, her eyes lowered. I don't know, she admitted. I was told your kind would kneel easily. I see now that was false. Jaren asked her if she was going to enslave him too. She said no. She wanted to learn from him, to understand the words he used, the tone, the reason he resisted. He taught her slowly. English, gestures, humor. She picked it up faster than he expected. In return, she told him stories of the stars, the war her people ran from, the empire that demanded obedience above all. She wasn't free either, not truly. She was just dressed better. One day, Kavexa stormed into the room while Jaren and Ayari sat side by side. She shouted in Sarek tongue. Ayari rose calmly and replied in English. He is not yours to command anymore. Kavexa froze. Her student, the Duvi slave, had taught their princess to speak like a human. Jaren watched as the two women stared each other down. Something had shifted. A line had been crossed. He was no longer just a prisoner or a number. He was a reason for rebellion inside their ranks. And it all began because he refused to kneel. Kivesa stood frozen as Ayari dismissed her with words learned from the human. It wasn't just about language, it was about control. The princess had broken the chain of command with a single sentence. Kivexa's jaw clenched, but she bowed and left the chamber without a word. Jaren didn't understand what had just happened, but he saw the respect in the guard's silence. For the first time they looked at him like something dangerous, not because of strength, because he had changed the princess. He had made her speak his words. Ayari turned to him with a strange look in her eyes. "Your language," she said, "softly, feels different when I speak it. Like the words move in the chest instead of the throat." Jaren smirked. "That's how humans fight back. We speak with heart, not fear." Over the next few days, she asked for more. More words. More meanings. She wanted to know why humans used sarcasm. Why they said things like, "I'm fine," when they weren't. She wanted to understand why a simple word like home could bring tears. Jaren answered what he could, but he also asked about her life, her people. Ayari admitted she had never been on her own world, born on a ship, raised in a palace of glass and steel. Her freedom was only what her title allowed. "We're all wearing chains," she whispered. The guards didn't stop Jaren from walking freely in Ayari's presence anymore. He taught her in gardens, in libraries, on observation decks. One day, she handed him a datapad and asked him to write Earth's alphabet on it. When he finished, she stared at it like it was treasure. Kivexa watched from a distance. Her rage was quiet now, colder. She spoke to her mother, High Commander Solon. "The human has infected our air with weakness." Solon disagreed. "He has taught her to question. That is strength." Kivexa did not agree, but Kivexa was not the only one watching. Word spread through the fleet. Other slaves noticed that Jaren walked without chains. Some whispered that the human had cast a spell on the princess. Others said he must be part of a secret Terran resistance. When Ayari took Jaren to the central command deck, officers stared in silence. A human on the bridge was unheard of. She introduced him as a linguistic liaison. He said nothing, just stood tall. Ayari ordered that every new Sirak officer must learn human phrases. The Empress sent a message later that night. Her hologram towered above Ayari's private quarters. "You are playing a dangerous game, daughter," she said. Ayari bowed. "I am learning from him, not surrendering." The Empress narrowed her eyes but said no more. Jaren didn't trust the Empress. He told Ayari that kindness from rulers often had knives behind it. She smiled bitterly. "My mother doesn't use knives, she uses people." Jaren looked at her and asked quietly, "What does she plan to use you for?" Ayari had no answer. That night, Jaren was summoned by Kivexa, not in chains. She waited alone in the combat arena. No guards, no cameras. She threw a wooden practice staff at his feet. "Fight me. No weapons, just truth." He picked it up and nodded once. They moved in circles. She struck first, fast and strong. He dodged barely. His body still remembered the pain from the first time she whipped him. He blocked and parried. She fought like someone who had something to prove. But he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to understand. "Why are you angry?" he asked between strikes. "Because you lost control?" She answered with a swing that nearly cracked his staff. "Because you made her care," she growled. She was supposed to rule, not bend. He didn't back down. "She's not bending. She's growing." After 10 minutes they both stood panting. Neither had won, neither had fallen. Kivexa lowered her weapon. "You are dangerous in ways I was never trained to fight." He dropped his staff. "And yet here we are. Not enemies, not friends, just real." She left without a word. The next morning, Ayari gave Jaren a gift. A pendant with the Sirak royal crest on one side, and the English word, hope, etched on the other. It's not a chain, she said. It's a choice. You can leave any time. Jaren held it for a long time. Then he tied it around his neck. He looked at her and spoke the words she had taught him in Sarek language. I choose to stay. Jaren walked beside Ayari through the silent corridor of the Empress's private wing. Every step echoed as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The guards didn't stop him. The princess had summoned her mother, and Jaren was invited. To speak, he had expected a throne room. Instead, he found a garden under a dome of crystal. Trees grew from soil not native to the Sarek. Water flowed through channels cut with perfect edges. The Empress stood alone, barefoot on polished stone, her white gown dragging behind her. She didn't greet them. Her eyes locked onto Jaren. So this is the human who taught my daughter to question. Her voice was calm, but sharp like cold. Metal. Jaren didn't flinch. Your daughter taught herself. I just gave her words. The Empress circled him slowly, studying every inch. You were supposed to be nothing but a worker. A broken piece of a conquered world. Now my officers whisper your name. Jaren didn't answer. She stopped in front of him. What is it you truly want? He met her gaze. Freedom for my people. Understanding between our species. A life where I'm not treated like cargo. The Empress turned to Ayari. And you believe this is possible? Ayari nodded. He showed me what we never saw before. He gave us a mirror. The Empress walked back to the edge of the pool. Mirrors show truth. But truth is not always power. Empires are not built on truth. They are built on obedience. Jaren stepped forward. Then your empire is afraid of people who speak. She turned her head slightly. That single movement made the guards tighten their grips. But she raised her hand, signaling calm. Tell me, human. If I ordered my daughter to stop seeing you, would you obey? Jaren answered without pause. No. Ayari didn't speak. Her heart pounded in her chest. The silence that followed felt like a blade in the air. The Empress finally spoke again. Then I would be forced to choose between my daughter and my throne. Ayari replied before Jaren could. Then choose the future. The next day, word spread across the fleet that the Empress had approved a new cultural exchange initiative. One human from each colony would be selected to teach their language to Sarek officials. It was not peace, but it was a start. Jaren returned to Ayari's ship. The pendant still hung from his neck. He walked past Kaveza, who stood in silence. At the corridor wall, she didn't glare anymore. She gave him a respectful nod. He returned it without words. Ayari greeted him with a smile. You're more stubborn than I imagined, he laughed softly. You should meet my grandmother. They sat in the same study room, surrounded by scrolls and maps. But this time, they weren't alone. Two young Sarek cadets joined them. The cadets listened carefully as Jaren explained grammar and emotion. Ayari translated when needed. For the first time, humans were not being taught. They were teaching. The balance was shifting in quiet, powerful ways. That night, Ayari asked Jaren a question she had held back for weeks. If your people win back their freedom, will you return to Earth? He looked up at the stars through the window. If there's a place for peace, I'll go there. If not, I'll help build one here. She didn't respond at first. Then, she placed a small stone on the table. It had markings in both Sarek and English. One word repeated home. Maybe we build it together, she said. He looked at the stone and nodded. Kalan trouble came in the form of intercepted transmissions. Some Sarek warlords believed Ayari's actions were a threat to tradition. One message read, the human must be silenced. The princess must be corrected. Kaivexa read it and crushed the tablet in her hand. She rushed to Ayari's chamber. They're coming, not to debate, to destroy. Jaren was already arming himself with a shock baton. How many? Kaivexa answered firmly. Enough to make a message out of your corpse. Ayari stood between them. Then we don't fight. With blades, we fight with truth. Jaren's jaw tightened. Truth won't stop weapons. Ayari looked at him calmly. Then we'll make truth louder than their weapons. She activated a transmission beacon, one that reached every Sarek ship in range. Her voice echoed across screens and speakers. She spoke in Sarek, then in English. Then she handed the last words to Jaren. He looked into the lens. I am not your enemy. I am proof your empire can change. You feared what I could teach your princess. But what I've learned from her is just as powerful. We don't need to kneel to learn. And we don't need war to grow. Jaren's voice reached across dozens of Sarek ships. It played in war rooms, soldier quarters, and noble courts. Some listened with curiosity, others with anger. But none could ignore the human who stood beside their princess and spoke with calm fire in his eyes. Kaivessa stood guard outside the chamber, knowing full well what might come next. She had trained to fight armies. She had never trained to protect a human. And yet, here she was, ready to break the law if it meant shielding someone she once called weak. Inside, Ayari watched the transmission counter rise. Thousands were tuning in. She knew this was not diplomacy anymore. It was rebellion. Through knowledge, through voice, through the one thing her people had never valued in a slave, his mind. The backlash came fast. 2 high-ranking warlords broke formation from the fleet and began moving toward Ayari's sector. They claimed emergency military rights to remove a compromised leader. Their ships were heavily armed, faster, built for crushing resistance. Kavexa contacted Ayari. We have less than 1 hour before they arrive. They are not here to talk, Ayari replied firmly. Then let them see who we've become. She turned to Jaren. You wanted to build peace. Now it's time to defend it. With more than words, Jaren didn't hesitate. He followed Ayari and her inner circle to the main broadcast chamber. From there, they activated a wide-range relay. Ayari handed Jaren the translator device. We send this to every planet, every station, every colony. Even Earth, he adjusted. The mic cleared his throat. To the Sarek people. And to the humans still living under this empire's rule. My name is Jaren. I was taken from my world as a number. Now I stand as a name, a voice, and a teacher. Ayari stepped forward. And I, Princess Ayari of the Sarek Dominion, have chosen to learn, to grow, to stop the cycle of silence. If that is treason, then I am guilty. Her words sparked across thousands of comm channels. When the warlords arrived, they didn't fire immediately. Their ships hovered in orbit, unsure of what they had walked into. The images pouring from Ayari's relay reached their crews first. Crews who were not loyal to the crown, but to truth. Some Sarek soldiers refused to attack. Others began broadcasting their support. One rebel ship, the Varko's Blade, hailed Ayari directly. Your words reached my daughter before my orders did. The captain said, We stand with you. In the control room, Kavexa watched the rebellion grow. Her fingers tightened on her blade, but her heart felt something strange. Not fear, not duty, pride. She turned to Jaren. You changed them more than I ever could with training, he answered without looking at her. You trained them to obey. I just showed them why they shouldn't. Kavexa let out a breath through her nose and smirked. Remind me to never play chess with you. One of the warlord ships launched a warning strike. Not at Ayari's ship, but near a human colony still under Sarek rule. The message was clear. Submit or others will suffer. Ayari stared at the flames on the screen with quiet rage. Jaren slammed his hand on the console. They're punishing. Innocence just to silence a voice. Ayari nodded. Then we make our voice louder than ever. She sent another signal. This time, she called every neutral and rebel Sarek leader to respond publicly. One by one, responses came in. Some pled for peace. Others promised protection to human colonies. The warlords didn't expect this level of division. Their power relied on silence. Now the silence was broken. Inside the Empress's private court, she stood watching the chaos unfold on her throne screen. Advisors shouted, panicked, arguing over the next step, but the Empress remained quiet until she raised her hand and said, "Call the Council of Wills. It is time I speak." Jaren didn't know what the council was. Ayari explained. It's the highest assembly of Sarek leadership. No cameras, no broadcasts. Only truth, spoken once, recorded forever. Jaren asked if humans had ever stood there. She shook her head. Never, until now. He entered the chamber beside her. 12 figures stood in a circle, wearing robes marked by age and power. The Empress stood at the center. She looked at Jaren. Then she looked at her daughter. Speak now, or surrender forever. Ayari's voice didn't shake. You taught us to dominate, to expand, but never to understand. This human taught me. That understanding is not weakness. It is survival. Jaren stepped forward. Your people fear what I represent, but I fear a future where we never speak. The council listened, silent, still. When they turned to the Empress for judgment, she did not answer with force. She looked to her daughter and said, "Then let the new language begin with her." The Empress's words rippled across the council chamber like a silent wave. No gavel slammed, no anthem played. But her decision had already changed the course of history. Jaren stood still, unsure whether he had won something or been handed a burden heavier than chains. Princess Ayari bowed her head slightly, then stepped toward Jaren. They won't announce it out loud, she said. But this means we have permission, not full support, not yet. But we can begin teaching openly, with protection under royal decree. Jaren didn't smile, he just breathed. He thought of Earth, of his sister, of the elders dragged from their homes. This wasn't justice for all, but it was a chance to build something better than revenge. He looked at Ayari and nodded once. Kyvexa met them outside the chamber. The warlords will not accept this easily. They will rebel openly now. Some have already declared your education centers as targets. Ayari didn't flinch. Then we defend them with words and shields. And if needed with force, training began immediately. Not in secret bunkers, but in public halls with banners showing both Sarek and human writing. The first multilingual school opened on a floating city over the ice seas of Veltorak. Jaren gave the opening lesson himself. Language is not just sound, he told a room filled with Sarek soldiers and human children. It is memory, it is pain, it is love. If you understand someone's words, you understand their life. And no empire can erase that. Ayari watched from the side. She wore a simple black robe with no symbols of royalty. She said it helped the students speak freely. One girl, barely 10, stood and asked Jaren and Sarek, "Why did your people keep fighting when they kept losing?" Jaren smiled softly, "Because we didn't want to lose ourselves." The room was silent after that. A silence filled not with fear, but with thought. The kind of silence that makes learning possible. But beyond the walls of Veltorak, danger brewed. Warlord Kron, once a close ally of the Empress, announced a faction split. His fleet of 10 ships turned rogue. He declared Ayari and Jaren enemies of Sarek purity. He promised to burn every school they built. The Empress sent a warning. Do not meet Kron in open war. His goal is to bake you into failure. Let the people decide who they follow. But Kron didn't wait for votes. He attacked a human colony. On Zurianine without mercy. Jaren and Ayari arrived just after the fires. Bodies were still being counted. Survivors wept in underground shelters. A girl held a broken writing tablet, still clinging to her English lesson scratched into its screen. Jaren knelt beside her. Do you remember the words? She nodded and whispered, I am more than a number. Ayari felt tears gather in her throat. Those words had been in Jaren's first lesson. The girl had remembered them even while hiding under rubble. Kvexa arrived next, leading a defense unit loyal to Ayari. She carried a captured message drone. It was from Kron. "Every word you teach is poison," the message said. "Every bond you create weakens our blood." Jaren crushed the drone under his boot. Ayari stood on the ruins of the school. She looked into the sky, her voice low but firm. "Then let our words poison the walls of tyranny." Jaren stood beside her. "And let our truth be louder than his fear." They rebuilt the school. This time with shields, emergency bunkers, and a direct communication line to the Empress herself. Ayari didn't hide from the risk. She visited every class, every student, every corner of the colony. So did Jaren. The Empress sent supplies, medics, and builders. But she never appeared in person. Some said it was pride. Others said it was fear. Still, she allowed Jaren and Ayari to keep spreading their message. City by city, system by system. One day, a Sarek elder approached Jaren. His skin was scarred from war. His eyes burned with suspicion. "You teach children to speak like you. Do you teach them to think like you too?" Jaren answered, "No, I teach them to think for themselves." The elder said nothing for a while. Then he sat on the steps outside the school and listened to the next class. By the end of the week, he was helping the students with their pronunciation. Jaren didn't claim victory. He didn't speak of peace as if it were finished. But in every word he taught, in every name remembered, he planted a seed. A seed that couldn't be burned by war or silenced by power. Jaren stood at the center of a massive hall built from glass, stone, and light. It was neither a palace nor a fortress. It was a school, built where 3 battlefields once stood. Humans and Sarek alike filled the seats, quiet and focused. This was not just another lesson. It was the first day of Peace Council training. Empress had declared that all future Sarek governors must pass through this academy. Not just to study war or law, but to learn humanity. To understand other voices. Ayari was now the Academy's highest-ranking scholar. She didn't sit above Jaren. She sat beside him. The final warlord Krun had been captured 3 weeks before. His fleet had collapsed under pressure from his own people. Some had refused his orders after hearing Jaren's broadcasts. Others simply no longer believed in fire over reason. Krun never spoke at trial. He looked broken, not beaten. He was. No longer feared, Jaren walked the academy each morning, greeting students from dozens of worlds. The first words he taught every group were always the same. You are more than what they call you. You are more than what they expect from you. You are you. Ayari began teaching Earth history, the mistakes, the wars, the rebuilding. She believed that peace did not come from pretending the past was clean. It came from knowing what had been broken and choosing not to break it again. Kvexa had taken a new role. Head of security for the academy. Her face was still sharp, her movements strict, but her voice had softened. Some students feared her. Others respected her. One boy asked if she used to hurt people like them. She answered honestly, yes, but not anymore. One evening, Jaren walked out to the garden where Ayari waited. The stars were visible through the open ceiling. No domes. No shields, just air and hope. She handed him a datapad. It held a new curriculum draft for interspecies ethics. She had written it in both languages. He read it carefully, then looked up. You used my words without asking. She smiled. I wanted them to reach more ears. He nodded, then use more of them. She tilted her head. Then help me write them. Together they drafted what would become the Academy's first shared text. A book with no throne, no weapon, no victory anthem. Only stories. One chapter was about a girl who learned to speak a new language from someone she once called a slave. Another chapter was about a boy who lost everything. but still taught the people who took it from him. The book was not fiction. It was not polished, but it was real. Students read it aloud in pairs. One human, one Sirik, every word spoken by both. During the Academy's first year-end gathering, Jaren was asked to speak. He stood on a simple platform, not above the crowd, but among them. "I was taken from my world," he said. "But now I help shape yours, and in doing so, I found something I never expected. A future worth living for." Ayari followed him with a message in her native tongue. "He gave us more than knowledge. He gave us reflection. And through him, I saw the parts of our empire we hid in silence." She looked at Jaren. "Now I no longer hide. The Empress never visited the Academy, but she sent one final order before stepping away from public command. Let no voice be silenced for speaking truth. Let no child be punished for asking questions. Let no language be seen as weakness again." Jaren walked through the halls with students cheering around him. Some gave him bracelets. Others handed him notes of thanks in both languages. One note simply said, "Because of you, I believe I matter." In the courtyard, Kaivexa stood watching. She held her hands behind her back as always. When Jaren passed her, she didn't salute. She gave a simple nod, not as a soldier, as someone who understood change. That night, Ayari and Jaren sat beside the reflection pool. The stars above shimmered. He leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. "So what now?" he asked. She replied, "Now we live. And we teach others to do the same." The war had begun with fire, but peace had begun with words. And the one they once tried to enslave had become the one they followed. Not with fear, but with respect. The human had not just survived the Sirik Empire. He had taught it to speak,